my name is Jonathan White, and I am the Sales and Marketing Manager at Troubador Publishing. And we are a self-publishing publisher, and I wanted to talk to you this afternoon about the self-publishing process. The idea is that I will talk you through quite generally and quite quickly, I hope, the whole idea of self-publishing and the self-publishing route of getting your book available to the UK book trade, with the idea that at the end of the session there will still be some time for you to ask any particular questions on anything I have spoken about or that you wish to ask me on. I'm afraid I don't see anything other than the screen that I am showing you, so I'm not getting any chat coming back at the moment, so I will keep going until the end of these slides, and then I'll close down my screen so I can hopefully see some responses from you. So what I want to do is to talk you through self-publishing and the route that your manuscript will take from the moment you finished it to the marketplace. But first of all, I just wanted to very briefly say, what is self-publishing? Well, we think that mainstream publishing is the more traditional route that people understand, whereby either you are commissioned to write a piece for a mainstream publisher, or that you submit a piece of work to a mainstream publisher and they then decide to publish it and take on the publishing role within that. The self-publishing side is basically everything else. So it is a very wide range of publishing options that you can choose when you are not actually going to a mainstream publisher. The most important thing here is that the cliche is that everyone is doing self-publishing because they want to become a bestseller. I suppose the most obvious 50 Shades of Grey idea that you are discovered through your self-publishing, but there are a whole range of other reasons why people will choose self-publishing as an option instead of going down the mainstream publishing route. So it's very important to understand what you're trying to achieve by publishing and whether self-publishing is the way that is the best way for getting your book available as an alternative to the mainstream publishing. So self-publishing, there are a whole different range of options that you can choose for self-publishing your book. There's partnership publishing. That's where you and a publisher agree that you will both fund a book and bring it out together. This is a more used particularly for smaller publishers who publish on particular subject matters, and for instance a publisher who specializes in fishing books or something like that, who can't actually bring out as wide a range of books as they might like to. But by going into partnership with authors, you both have a route to getting books available to the marketplace. Then there is a full service publisher who, like Troubador, where you can choose a whole range of options where you will get help in self-publishing your book. Alternatively, there are various packages that self-publishers will offer that you can basically choose a complete package and your book will be published under that. Or you can go down the bespoke route, which is you actually are choosing a designer, an editor, an illustrator. You're finding all of these people yourselves. You are using their services as you agree with them, and choosing that route to get your book self-published. The actual printing of your book, there is various choices that you have there, either that you are printing a stock of your book, but then you're going to have to look at a distribution method for your book, or you will be going down a print on demand route where your book is only being printed as you get orders for the book by customers. There's fully DIY self-publishing. Some people have the skills and the knowledge to be able to completely publish a book on their own. And if you want to choose that way, that is absolutely a way that some people have self-published their own books. And then there are various other formats of books that you can choose to self-publish your book under: the ebook format, or now the audio book format, which is becoming more and more popular, though it is an expensive way to publish your book. So you need to choose what's right for you as your expectations of what you are trying to achieve by publishing a book. And for that, you really need to understand what your aims and expectations are for the book and what you're wanting to achieve with it. In other words, you should really do a business plan for your book, as with anything that you are potentially going to invest money in. And then you need to work out what the potential costs might be in publishing a book and a budget for that, not just in costs, but actually in the time that it's going to take for you to publish a book, and whether, if you're a full-time job, you're going to be able to commit to that level of time that is going to be necessary. And then what skills you can bring to the publishing process, but more importantly, what skills you do not have and which you will need professional help if you're going to get your book professionally published. And like everything, it's a matter of planning these things in advance, and so that you are ready to choose the various options that there are open to you. So what I want to do is to talk through the way that your manuscript will move from your finished book that you have finished writing through the production process that all publishers will use, and self-publishing is no different in that way, whether you're doing it yourself or you're using some help for the production process, and then through the marketing and sales and distribution that you will also need to be thinking about for your book if you're going down the self-publishing route. Now, there are an all different and a wide range of different options you can choose to help self-publish your book, but it is potentially an expensive thing to do, and you should certainly be shopping around as much as possible to see what there is out there and whether it fits your requirements, and to get quotes on what the prices of doing such things will actually be like. There are a number of different people who will offer self-publishing services, and it's always worth choosing between them and seeing which each of them offer. You can normally get a quote from different self-publishing companies if you want particular aspects or services that they offer, and then you need to check whether it actually suits your requirements. Now, these quotes can be quite detailed, and self-publishing, like all publishing, I'm afraid, involves a large amount of jargon that you sometimes need to know and understand. So you have to really work out whether these quotes are explaining properly what you will get from them, and that you fully understand them. There is always this thing, hidden costs, and there are all sorts of hidden costs that might be within any quote. I mean, the most obvious thing is that if you are getting your book printed, until you choose how many copies of the book you want printed, the actual the printing costs will not be known. You can get quotes again for various different numbers, but there are all sorts of things that you may now have to factor in, which might not be, first of all, explained in the first quote. So you need to check whether there are any hidden costs or whether you're getting a complete package. The thing that we always say is it is a speculative venture to publish a book. There is no guarantees of success, and you must be able to feel that you can afford what you're putting into the process. Nobody can assume that their book will become a bestseller, or I'm afraid sell well, so you have to work out that you are able to spend the amount that you think you're going to need to bring the book out the way you want it to appear. So starting with your manuscript, and here the most important thing with self-publishing, as in with any publishing, is the editing process that you need to do to get your book ready for publishing and publication. And that's why I put edit, 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 and edit again, because when you are going to start the publishing process, and especially if you're going through the self-publishing process and you are using professional help in self-publishing your book, you're basically going to start being charged for services and things, and you want to make absolutely certain that your manuscript is ready to be published, and you are not going to suddenly find that halfway through the publication process you're going to need to be actually working on your manuscript again, or you're finding things that are wrong with it at a later point. So the editing process is hugely important to have got as far as you possibly can before you're moving into the publishing part of the process. And there are various things that you need to be thinking about when you are self-publishing, you are taking on the legal responsibility for bringing the book out. You may be using a self-publishing company, but they're acting as your agents because you're self-publishing it. So you need to look at whether there are any legal issues about your book, not just if you're doing a non-fiction book, but in fiction, whether characters can obviously be seen to be based on real people, and whether you might have issues with that. And of course, you need permissions to put illustrations and various things into your book, which you need to make sure you have full legal permission for. Libel and slander is obviously things that you need to be able to be quite confident that your book is not going to run foul of. And when you start the publishing process, you should really be thinking about if your book is illustrated. Have you got the right illustrations? Are they the right resolution? Can you use them properly? Have you sourced all those images that are ready to go? Because otherwise, again, you're going to have to put everything on hold while you are finding the images that you want to go into your book. And then when you're sure you're ready, or you are then ready to start the publishing process, but here we always say it is worth having a final check and to edit some more so that you are ready to move the book forward. Now, there are all different types of editing that you need to be thinking about when self-publishing your book. There are all different types of editing: the line edit, the critical edit, the copy edit, the proofread. These are all different parts of the editing process, which are looking at particular aspects of your manuscript and whether you need to be doing some more work on them. Please remember that you, having written this book, are incredibly closely linked with it. And the whole thing about editing is that you may need someone else to look at it from some distance so that they can actually be able to suggest changes. And sometimes just you have so closely been working with your own manuscript that it is very difficult to see the mistakes that might still be in it. There are various parts the editing process should take place. Is someone there? No, sorry, I was getting some feedback there. When the editing should be taking place, there are edits that should be taking place at the beginning of the process, and then as you move through, there are various parts of the production process which will involve editing as well. And then as you come to the very end of the process, the proofreading that is looking at your print files for the printing that is about to take place, and there's a final edit before the book is going off to the printing. The production stages of a self-publishing company are the same as of a mainstream publishing company. All publishers follow the same kind of basic production process. And if you are using a self-publishing company to help you in the process, they will go through in much the same process as a mainstream publisher puts their books through. So you'll first of all have the copy edit, you'll then have the typeset, you'll then move on to the various design parts, the cover design, and then you'll come to the proofread at the end before it is sent off to the printers to actually be printed. But here again, it is where it is very important to check what you're getting from the self-publishing help you're using in the self-publishing of your book, because some self-publishing companies are really just going to reformat your manuscript and put it into a format that they will then print it and bring it out on. The cheaper ends of the market are doing precisely that. You should then be looking at whether you want your book just to be appearing as a physical book, or whether you're also looking at the ebook conversions and the formats you're going to need. Your ebook, if you are having an ebook as well as a physical book, is not going to be just taking the print file and making an ebook out of it. You need to be able to convert your ebook, your print file into an ebook, and you need to do a conversion of the formats to do that. The thing about this is that production quality really matters in the producing of the end book, and the more you put into this process and the more you get potential help with this process, the more professional the end product will look. And that is the thing with self-publishing you should always be most concerned about, because you want to come out with the most professional looking product at the end that you possibly can. Then you move on to the design process, which is part of the production process that any self-publishing publisher will help you with. There are various design formats that you need to look at, which will mean that your book will appear to look like any other book, and that's what you really are looking for, is that your book will stand as well on the bookshelf beside one produced by Penguin or HarperCollins. But because of that, there are various ways that the book needs to be produced: the text, the design, the cover embellishments. All of these things will enhance the book and make it look like a professionally produced book, which will sit beside others on a bookshelf and not stand out as being just a self-published book, which is what you're always trying to avoid. One of the most biggest trends at the moment is that books are having value added by being made as beautiful books. That one of the ways that the physical books have fought back against the ebook format is that they are now sometimes very highly produced and will sit very happily on a shelf as an object of beauty, and therefore it's considered added value. But what is really obvious is that a poorly produced book, one that looks like a self-published book on the traditional cliche of one that will detract from its sales and will not help in the sales in any way. So the design is a very important part of the publishing process, which if you are self-publishing, you need to be thinking about. And then, of course, you move on to the printing, the actual printing of the book. If you are having a physical book printed, you are going to choose at some point as to how many copies you want to have printed, or whether you're going to have your book printed as a print-on-demand title. And that means that the files will be held by a print-on-demand printer, but copies will only be printed as an order comes in. But that does very much limit the places that will take orders for such print-on-demand books. The alternative is to have a print run, but then you've got to be looking at not only printing the books, but where they're going to be warehoused, where they're going to be stored, and how you're going to distribute those books afterwards as well. There are various different types of printing, obviously, digital and lithographic, different ways of printing, and it depends again what kind of book you're looking to produce as to where the best kind of printing will be for that book. There's going to be options as to the paper type that you're going to want. If your book is very heavily illustrated, you're going to want a paper type that is quite heavy, so that you're not going to have the illustration showing through on the back of the pages and ruining the pages behind it. So you need to be looking at the paper type, and all of these things will have an effect on the cost of the printing of your book, and you should take these into account. And then, of course, there are various different types of cover finishing, spot, UV, embossing, debossing. All of these kind of things are cover finishings, which will enhance the beauty of a book, but obviously there is a price attached to all of these. And when you are self-publishing, you are paying for all of these kind of things, and you need to be looking at whether it will be adding value and therefore is worthy of the extra cost or not, as the case may be. Then once your book is actually going to print, there's the whole marketing, sales and distribution side of the book. Now, the thing about marketing, and the most important thing to say about the marketing, is that you should be actually thinking about the marketing of your book from the very first moment you're starting to write the book. If you're leaving the marketing of your book till the end, when your book is being printed and is about to appear, you're doing it way too late, because you should be thinking about who your audience is for these books as part of your business plan for self-publishing a book. That if your book is for a particular audience, will they expect it to be of a certain type and format, and will it be properly presented for them as part of the book? And you should also be thinking about your audience when you're writing the book, and certainly when you're publishing the book, as to making sure it's the best possible book, but not leaving it to the last moment to actually start thinking about how you are going to be approaching these people to let them know that this book exists, that this book is coming out. So what you're trying to do is to match the production values and design of your book to other books that are out there. This is obviously the most easy way to check that your book seems to be on a par with other books that are out there. And if you're self-publishing your book, that's what you want it to be. So the easiest thing is to look on the various book stores, and whether online or when there are actually physical bookshops open, and see what else is out there, and see how those are priced, and how the production values. And you must remember with self-publishing that what you're putting in is going up against a mainstream potentially published book where they can do very high print runs and therefore get a low unit cost, and that it's not therefore sometimes going to be possible to make a similar production values on the level of printing that you might be looking at. Metadata is the most important part of the book now, if in order for it to sell properly in the book trade. And the timeliness of your metadata is also a very important part of the marketing of your book. The book trade expects to know in advance about various aspects of your book so that the book can be started to be listed on various retailers' websites. You've got to get the ISBN number properly sorted out for your book so that your book will be easily orderable. And then you also have to be thinking about the various parts of the bibliographic data. And of course, the price of your book. Again, this is something which you need to be looking at from early on, and checking your book isn't going to price itself out of the market by being way too expensive. But then you're going to have to look at the production values that you can afford on that price, thinking about the discounts you're going to have to give, and to make sure that you are still making a profit on the print cost that your book is going to cost to actually be produced. Marketing basically comes down to what you potentially are paying for as services, but there is also, of course, the whole promotion side of things, which is free. And if you're doing it yourself, the only thing you're going to have to do is spend time doing it. So marketing, as in various promotions that you can put your book up for, whether retailer ones or other paid for ways of increasing the publicity for your book and marketing your book. But promoting your book is just a matter of either getting some help for it, and then you might be paying a fee, but otherwise it's spending the time and working out how the best way to promote your book. The two main ways of promoting your book is firstly to the book trade. That's using the various industry standard ways, which is the production of an AI, which you can send out. An AI is an advanced information sheet, which you can send out to the book trade and bookshops, and then getting all your data up on Nielsen book data, which means that it will be freely available to various booksellers so that they will know where all that they need to about the book, and how to get hold of it, and where it will be sourced from, and the discounts that will be available, and all those kind of aspects of the book, which the book trade need to know about in order to feel confident to sell your self-published book. The other side of promotion is, of course, promoting it to the media, and that's not just the national newspapers that people know about, but it's all kinds of various media, whether it be bloggers or online reviewers, anything else that you can do to try and raise awareness about your book, and that's things like producing a press release, which you can send off to all different types of media, but also be thinking about whether you can do other things that will help to promote your book, whether producing articles that people might be interested in putting onto blogs and websites, or looking at all of the ways that you can actually try and get onto radio or potentially TV, that you can publicize your book if you can get onto these kind of various ways of promoting to your book through the media. The other part of marketing is, of course, that as well as your book, there is you as an author, and you can market your book by building up your author brand. And this becomes increasingly important as you are publishing more books, and as you are making sure that the book is your name or author name hopefully will be becoming more known if you're having some success in your earlier books and then publishing books following on to that. But there are all sorts of ways that you can also be marketing yourself as an author. The most obvious, again, is social media, which is there are all various ways of using social media to try and build your author presence, and for people to know you as an author of books, and therefore hopefully be able to promote your books through that. You need to choose whether you're going to have a website for the book, or whether you're going to have an author website, and whether you actually need a website for the book. A website is quite a static thing, so are you going to be able to drive people to come back to visit your website again, and are you going to have more books which are going to be appearing in it, and more articles and things about the books which are going to help to market you as an author, as well as the various books that you are publishing. And then, of course, there's all sorts of paid-for marketing that you can do, whether it be advertising your book in various magazines or online, or paying for a PR campaign that will take place on you as an author, which you can either, again, use the services of a self-publishing company, or you can choose to use a PR company outside of it if you're thinking that that is something that would help your author brand to be noticed. When you are choosing the various formats of your books, you should be thinking about whether you want your book to be a physical book or an e-book, whether just going for an e-book is going to be perfectly acceptable for your book, and whether, or alternatively, you need to be thinking about a dual format. Amazon, of course, say that you should be having both formats of your book available, because if you're only having one, then all those people who only will buy an e-book or a physical book will not be buying your book. So it's only by having both formats of your book that you can be sure of getting all the possible sales that you might possibly get for your book. Now, of course, you can also choose Amazon as a publishing platform, and you can make sure that your book is available on Amazon and published through Amazon themselves. But is that going to be the right place for your book? Amazon is a hugely powerful part of the book market, but if you do publish your book through Amazon, you will only have your book available on Amazon itself. There are various other various platforms that your book can be available. Apple Books, Kobo Books. There's all various different formats of ebooks that you can choose to make your book available on. You don't have to do it just through Amazon. The conversion of your files is there an important part of changing your print file into an ebook platform, and you should be thinking about that and whether you can do that yourself or whether you're going to be needing professional help with that. And then, of course, there's also the marketing of your ebooks, which can be different from the marketing of your physical books. Marketing an ebook, there are various ways of marketing specifically ebooks, which various publishing houses use. So it isn't exactly the same as marketing a physical book. There are differences. When your book is out and you've had it printed, you've then got to be thinking about the distribution and sales of your book. The book supply chain is potentially quite a complicated one. You need to set up a warehousing distribution if you're using that, and you've got to be working out how you are going to be able to supply retailers who potentially are wanting to buy your book. And if you're self-publishing, these are all the kind of things that either you need to get help with or you're going to take on yourself. And there are, again, the various ways that you can sell your physical book through Amazon. You don't actually have to always just sell it directly to Amazon. There is also the Amazon Marketplace, which is a way of other companies use to sell books on Amazon. And is your good book going to be available through those various companies who work through the Amazon Marketplace? The most common way that publishers have of selling books on Amazon is the Amazon Advantage account. That's the way of having a publisher account, and that's why using a publisher will be of help if you are selling your book on Amazon. The most important thing about selling book to the book chain is, though, that you need to make sure that you are going to be actually paid for your book, and that's why invoicing is very important as part of your distribution of your book. You've got to know about trade discounts that various retailers will expect you to give them if they are handling your book. There's things like returns you need to be thinking about, and all of this has an impact on the invoicing you'll be doing to retailers for the books that you are selling them. And then, of course, there's also wholesalers who work between distributors and retailers. Of the two really major ones, one, Bertrand's, went bust last year, but Gardner's, the other really major wholesaler, is still hugely important if your book is going to be freely available to the UK book trade. So you need to be thinking about how you are working with those retailers and wholesalers who work through the book supply chain. So we're coming towards the end of my little quick run through the self-publishing process and how you need to go about it and what you need to be thinking about it. But of course, I mean, one of the things you need to be thinking about with self-publishing, as in with producing any book or publishing it, is what your criteria for success is for self-publishing your book. And the whole thing about it is that you need to learn from the way that you have self-published your book, and to make sure that if you are going to be publishing other books, that you have better understood the process afterwards. Did the project meet your objection? Do you get the book that you were looking for, and has it sold the way you were expecting it to sell? Have you got to the audience that you were expecting to get to? All these kind of things are things that you need to be looking at if you're self-publishing your book, because you're going to need to change potentially what you're doing if you publish another book, if your first one hasn't worked so well, or you're going to be wanting to repeat again if it has been a success, so that you can make sure that the second time around you're learning from all the successful things that you did when you initially published your book. So that is a very quick summary of how you can get your book published and the things you need to think about if you are self-publishing your book. In summary, the most important thing, which I've come back to again and again, is know what you want to achieve from self-publishing your book. You're not going to have a mainstream publisher taking over that whole aspect of the book after you've written it, so you need to know what you are wanting to achieve by self-publishing it, so you can work out at the end whether it's worked. And also, right the way through the process, you can keep the process on track to achieving what you're looking for. The book trade is a slow-moving beast. Books shops and book retailers want to know about books potentially up to 6 months in advance of publication, and so you can't really rush everything and be as effective as you would like to be. You need to take time over the various processes that your book will go through, the publication processes, but also when letting the book trade know about it. If you're trying to do it all at a huge speed, you will find that you will lose out, because a lot of retailers will not operate as quickly as you would hope they might be able to. So it's better to give it the time and make sure that you've given it enough time to achieve success. Before you start down the publishing process, the self-publishing process, which, as I've said again and again, you are going to be paying for, you need, or you're going to be doing it yourself, you need to make sure your book is ready to be published. The finishing writing it is not necessarily a finished manuscript that you are ready to take to a publisher. If you're going to a mainstream publisher, the finished manuscript they will then work on to get it into a publishable state. But if you are self-publishing, you need to have done as much preparatory work as you possibly can. There is lots of advice you can take on how to get your book published, and we would always advise you do take advice. But what the other side of that is that at the end of the day, you are going to have to make some choices about your book, and if you try and do everything by committee, you will not end up with a distinctive book. You will not be able to, at the end, give your book something that is going to make it stand out from the crowd. So take advice, but don't do everything just by committee. At some point, you have got to lead the process. You are self-publishing this book, and you've got to take it on board that you're going to be pushing the project forward. Marketing is something you need to be thinking about from the very start. It is as important as the writing of the book from stage one, because you should be thinking about your audience and who you're writing for and what the book is going to be for, and you don't want to be changing it later on because you suddenly realize it's not working for the audience that you are expecting to want to buy it. there is a right way that publishers will do things, and it's been built up over time because that's the way it has happened in the past, but that's the way people expect it now to happen. So there are things that you need to do and to think about to follow the right process, because otherwise you'll get into a terrible muddle if you're trying to do things out of the process that you should be able to. And obvious things like the metadata for a book, you need to get in place before you start marketing a book, and you need to do things like editing before you're typesetting. These are things that are self-evident and very obvious, but you need to do them the right way around. The other side of things is that by self-publishing a book, you are controlling that. You are taking on the whole responsibility. If you're seeing it as this is something that you are not going to in any way enjoy or have any confidence in, you're probably not going to make a good success of it. So you really should be enjoying what you're doing. You have a lot more control over the book that you are producing through the self-publishing route, because everyone who's working is working as your agent. They're working for you, who is paying the bills and is pushing the project. So enjoy it, because you're putting the money into it and you're choosing this as a route. So you need to get some satisfaction out of doing that. So that's the summary of it. Just very quickly, who we are, Troubador. Troubador is a self-publishing company. We have a number of imprints. We have Matador, which is our self-publishing imprint. We also have the Book Guild, which is a partnership publishing imprint. But as well as that, we also offer what we call Indigo, which are author services for people who are not actually publishing books with us. So we offer a whole range of publishing services. And we also normally have a self-publishing conference that we run to help people if they are choosing the self-publishing route. Unfortunately, that has not been able to take place since the COVID time, but we're hoping will come out again for next year. Just a very little bit about who I am, why I've been talking to you about the self-publishing route. I have a background both in book selling and then through mainstream publishing before I came into the self-publishing side of things. So there was just a few things about who I am. I can talk more about any of these things, but I wanted to live at least a little bit of time to get some response or questions from you. So in 40 minutes, that is a very, very quick run through of what my presentation is all about. So and then so now I've got to work out how to stop sharing my screen, which I've now
back
done.
with us now, Jonathan. Thank you very much for that. So Harish has their hand raised. So Harish, if you'd like to ask a question, then Helen has another one in the chat.
Hi there, can you hear me okay?
You're fine.
I can hear you very well.
Hi, good afternoon. Really nice to hear you, actually. You said some really useful things. But what I wanted to ask you was, you sound quite knowledgeable about this, and it's really helpful to know that. Do you offer like a consultancy service to people who want to self-publish, who can bring their work to you, and then you can give them pretty much what you've just done, but more personalized to them?
We don't offer it in the way I think you're offering. I mean, if you come to us as a company, if you go to any self-publishing company, you can get a quotation for your book, and we will talk to you about your book as part of that quotation process. If you also have specific requirements from us, you can. We have an Indigo service. I mean, you can see the various services we offer if you go to the Troubador website. We don't sit and talk to people as charging you by the hour to talk about self-publishing, but there are lots of people out there who will give you help on that aspect of publishing your book. And certainly, if you do research and then decide you want to use parts of our business, we can certainly quote you for doing various things.
Okay.
No, but I'm afraid that, we don't.
Yeah, it's all right. I work in law, so I kind of always go by the consultancy approach, and I think it'd be something. Maybe it's a trick you're missing out on.
There is a company called the Literary Consultancy, TLC, who I think do exactly what you're looking for. So it might be worth talking to them about. They will give you help and advice as an overview of the publishing process, which I think may be slightly more what you're looking for.
The Literary Consultancy, brilliant. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for your help. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Was there another question?
There's a couple in the chat. So the first one, Helen asked if you could say a bit more about hybrid publishing, please. And I'll just read the second one because it might be worth treating together. Or the second one might be easy to answer. My question is, if you self-publish, can you return to mainstream publishing for the same book at a future date?
Those are two different questions, but I will deal with them one by one, and then people can come back if they want more explanation about this. So hybrid publishing is, as I think what you're talking about, partnership publishing. So the full self-publishing route is to take on a self-publishing company who will work as your agent, and you will pay them for the self-publishing services that you use from them. If you go into partnership publishing, and we have a different part of our company which does partnership publishing, you are still putting your book forward to a certain extent for some kind of selection, because you are asking a publisher to also put money into the project. So both sides need to feel that they are going to have a successful project coming out of it. As I say, a partnership publishing, there are, I mean, very general partnership publishers who will work on just about any subject, and there are others who are particularly publishing in a certain area, and they see it as a way of getting more content out that they can publish themselves. And so a lot of specialist smaller publishers will do partnership publishing with authors who they are not quite confident that they can publish on their own, but they will go into a partnership with you. So that's what partnership publishing is. The difference is that with self-publishing, you are just taking on a self-publishing company and paying them for the services. So you completely control what your book is, but you're having to pay for that service. With partnership publishing, it is much more like mainstream publishing, because again, you are putting your book up for selection, and there are a number of books which partnership publishers will not take on because they don't think it is of the caliber or the subject matter that they feel that they can publish it with. So it isn't completely self-publishing, because you're somewhere in between self-publishing and mainstream publishing. The other part of the question, or the separate question, was, yes, there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't self-publish your book at stage one, and then a publisher will pick it up and either republish it. We have had a number of authors who are first self-published with us, and either then have gone on to republish that same book with a mainstream publisher afterwards, who's seen it available and think they can make it much more widely available through what they're going to put into the package, whether redesigning it or adding further illustrations or changing it in some way. And then we've had also other authors who started out by publishing, self-publishing, and then on their second or third or fourth book, they get picked up, and then they will be picked up by a mainstream publisher who will then publish their new work afterwards, but may also, as part of that process, take on the republishing of their earlier work and bring those books out themselves as well. So yes, anyone can. When you have self-publishing, you are controlling the publishing and distribution of that book, and at any point you can choose to put it out of print and republish it with someone else in a different way or a different format. I hope that answered it. There was some chat that popped up then, but I'm afraid I missed it before they disappeared. So
the next question was, Actually, so there's a couple of questions come up. I'll take it each in turn. So the first one, thank you for your talk. It is filled with significant guidance. If you would give 1 or 2 takeaway points or advice, what would it be for those interested in self-publishing?
The most important thing always is to do your research. There is an awful lot of research you can do before you go down the self-publishing process. And when you are self-publishing, you are paying for everything. You are choosing what you want done with your book, and you're having to pay for it. So the most important thing is to fully research what you're trying to achieve. And that's what I was saying, is that you really need to do a business plan at the very start of your book, of what you want to get out of it, what help you are going to need, and what you can afford to pay for to make it a successful undertaking. As I say, a lot of people self-publish because not just that they want to sell large amounts of books, they want to use the books for a particular reason. They want to produce a book that ties into a business that they're doing. So there's all different reasons why people choose self-publishing, and they will have a different goal for what their success is going to be through self-publishing book. But what you really have to do is, first of all, is do the research and understand what the services you are, and you can choose if you are going to use people to help you self-publish, and you need to have done as much research as possible. When you're self-publishing, you are controlling everything. You're using people as an agent to help you in what you're doing, but you have overall control, and you need to do that research first before you go down there. Otherwise, you can find yourselves just paying out large amounts of money that you don't need to for a service you're not really requiring.
Thank you. There was another question then. Elaborating on my first question on minimum order quantity, what quantities would a bookstore require for the first order, please?
Again, I'm afraid there is absolutely no answer to that. If you are going to self-publish a book, you are going to be choosing a distribution route. And if you choose a distribution route for your book, then you have to have enough copies for it available to go through that distribution. So you need to be thinking, it's not so much that your book is going to be in lots of retailers, because retailers will be very cautious about buying your book, but you need to have a sufficient supply of books in a distributor so that you can also afford to put copies of your book into Amazon as they need it, or the wholesalers and various other things. You're certainly going to need 200 or 300 copies of a book if you're going to be able to properly distribute your book, depending on whether you're going to use a professional distributor or do it yourself. And the other side of it is the more copies you produce, the cheaper your print price is going to be, but you're going to tie up money in stock. So again, it's very wise to be as cautious as possible about your print run, to actually go potentially for a higher unit cost for your book, in order that you're not tying up large amounts of cash in stock that you might not sell, because it's only if you sell those books that you'll make a profit on them. But I'm afraid there really is no answer to say you need exactly this amount of books in order to properly do your book into the book trade, because you just don't know what the reaction is going to be and how many copies you're going to need. It's always better to be cautious and then react quickly if hopefully you're getting a good response, but you have to make those decisions yourself, I'm afraid, because there is cost implications for them.
Thank you. I'm just checking. Oh, another question. Can you give an indication of what type of budget would be required for full self-publishing service?
Again, I'm afraid it really is very difficult to give that. It really depends, again, on what your book is. There is no way, because every single book is different. If you're doing if you're doing an illustrated book, it'll be very different to a non-illustrated book. If you are wanting to produce a book which you're going to do a fairly decent print run, it's very different in the budget that you can afford to spend on it. What you actually have to do is have a book ready and then get quotes for how much this would cost. And a good self-publishing company will give you a quote on what it would cost to publish a book with them, but it is impossible to do until they see that. We won't give out a general quote because it is so different if you want to do an illustrated book from a non-illustrated book, or if you're doing a small poetry book to if you're doing a 800-page novel, if you're doing a hardback book to a paperback book. Everything, I'm afraid, has a cost implication, and you need to decide what you want and what you want to achieve. So the best way is to get your manuscript ready as you can, and then get a proper quotation afterwards. It's certainly going to cost you potentially a couple of £1,000 though, unless. But again, that's using a self-publishing company. You can do it very, very cheaply if you do it on various options of putting it into a process where it will basically just be reformatting your book and then printing it to customer demand. That's actually the Amazon route, but it will be much cheaper to do that, but you'll have a very different book than if you are putting a lot more time and effort and money into the design and production of that book.
There was also then a comment which I'll just share with you because I don't think people are asking for comments yourself, but Troubador Matador's own free book on self-publishing is very useful, and for me as a first-timer was a real eye-opener on how the whole self-publishing system works. So just thought you'd want to know that.
That's very good. Yes, I mean, I would thoroughly recommend that you go and look at our website, because we do try and give you as much help as we possibly can before you're potentially coming to us or going somewhere else. We're trying to make self-publishing as accessible as possible, and we thoroughly believe that customer service and explanation about what the self-publishing process is, it can only be of help. Good to know that someone's come away happy from that.
Thank you. I think we're coming up to the end of the session. It's probably time for one more question. If they're was reasonably lucky to be working in schools yesterday. That said that some comments going on. People are offering advice on self-publishing in the chat as well. So I think we have time for one more question. And there aren't any. I'd just like to extend my thanks to you very much for joining us today. There's lots of comments coming through now. Very informative, very useful. Thank you. It was indeed. So.
Well, that's great. Well, I very much hope that at breakneck speed explains some of the processes that you can need to think about and go through if you're going down the self-publishing route. But
brilliant.
I hope you did all hear me in the end. I shouted as loudly as I possibly could, so I hope it did come through. And hopefully, if I was difficult to hear, the recording will explain some of it again and make it easier to understand. But enjoy the rest of the conference, and thank you very much for listening.